Hello, welcome to Chamber Live, brought to you by the East Lancs Chamber of Commerce, sponsored by Forbes Solicitors. The HR Forum is East Lancashire's dedicated group for HR professionals. It aims to connect East Lancs HR experts and share best practice, share the latest advice, and much more. The views expressed in this webinar don't necessarily represent the views of the East Lancs Chamber of Commerce, and all facts were believed to be correct at the time of recording, which is the 6th of July, 2021. So today we've got more topics than the leftover pile from my selection box in January. I love that line, by the way. We'll hear from our sponsors Forbes with an update on some of the HR issues that businesses are raising about vaccinations, about home working, about reluctance in returning to work and more. Chamber members, many of you on the call today, have access to a number of benefits. One of those is the Westfield Health Plan. We'll find out what that is, what all that means, and what benefits it can give to keep your workforce fit, healthy and engaged. We'll also hear from Burnley's largest employer, Boohoo, on their processes, their current challenges and their unique approach to the apprenticeship levy. And talking about the apprenticeship levy, we'll be joined by UCLan and Burnley Council on that very subject. So lots to cover. Let's dive in and we'll kick off, no pressure, with Carol. So Carol's worked for Westfield Health as a health and wellbeing consultant for the last 7 years, following a 34-year career as a manager at HSBC, assisting corporate clients. Her primary role is to help organisations to implement health and wellbeing strategies that lead to a workforce that's healthy, happy and in work. The British Chamber of Commerce have partnered with Westfield Health for over 10 years. East Lancs Chamber also part of that partnership. So many of our East Lancashire members have got plans and services provided by Westfield, including, just to name one, Senator over in Altham, who I think are on the call this morning. Over to you, Carol. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. And thank you, Simon and Debbie, very much for inviting me to speak today. I haven't been nervous about it at all. And it's lovely to be able to do this virtually and see everybody actually. And but it would also have been nice to be with you all at Boohoo. So Westfield. My job really, guys, is to look after business clients and their employees who have health cover with us. And as Simon's alluded to, my clients are as diverse as Sophology, the furniture retailer, to Senator just down the road in Altham, and Lupton and Place, a foundry in Burnley that you may be aware of. So a whole range of clients. And my job is very simple. It's to help you to keep your staff healthy, happy, and very importantly, here. So hence the title of my presentation today, Happier Workers Work Better. So first of all, I'd like to tell you a little, next slide, please, Simon. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Westfield. We are like the Chamber, a not-for-profit organisation, and we're 102 years old, which is staggering really, isn't it? We began in Sheffield back in 1919 when we asked the steel workers if they wanted to join a fund to look after them if they were poorly, and that was called a penny in the pound scheme. And of course, our wonderful NHS wasn't launched until 1948. So if you were poorly before then, you really got a bill for your medication or even to see the GP. So we asked our workers to pay that pound, and then they had, of every pound they earned, and then they had the cover. And today we still offer a similar product. We now call it a health cash plan, which most of you will be aware of that type of cover. And where from as little as £6 a month, an employer can provide cover for his employees. Next slide, please, Simon. So we all know that well-being at work is sometimes seen as a nice to have, a little bit pink and fluffy, and something to keep the troops happy when there's some spare cash lying around. And it clearly has an image problem. And as a consequence, it's often the first thing to be cut when budgets get tight. Westfield believe if businesses do this, they could be overlooking a vital tool to recovery. COVID has shown us all that the success of our businesses depend very much on both the physical and mental health of our people. So over the last 18 months, Westfield have funded research to understand the impact of the pandemic on both businesses and their people. And this presentation I've put together from the findings of our Coping with COVID report and our Coping After COVID reports. And Debbie very kindly after this event will be sending you links to those reports that should you wish to read them, please do so. And the reports told us that wellbeing has a huge influence on employee productivity and inevitably on business performance. Next slide, please, Simon. So the research, we surveyed 1,600 employees and HR leaders all across the UK. And some of the findings, while shocking, are hardly surprising, I think. In 2020, days off due to mental and ill health increased by 10%. A third of employees said their mental health affects their productivity on a weekly basis. And interestingly, 81% of HR managers say the pandemic has increased their wellbeing focus. And I can verify this from the number of new calls I've had from new clients and calls from existing clients over the last 16 months. I have been really busy and I didn't expect that last February. Next slide, please, Simon. So the mental health impact of COVID. The results regarding the mental health impact of COVID are even more striking when you consider there's 10 million people have been furloughed. So it's unlikely that any of those staff would have reported it necessarily to the HR team, being that they were at work, off work anyway. So this leaves them very much unaccounted for in our research, but we believe the effects will still be felt by businesses when employees do return to work, because let's face it, mental health is not usually a quick fix. There's inevitably a cost to the economy, let alone the impact on individuals and their families. Many of my clients who have health cash plans with us, which include an employee assistance programme, have seen a huge increase in calls and counselling cases. I've been staggered by how many. So we provide monthly reports to these clients so they can keep abreast of what's happening and sort of see things in the background. And so we'll tell them how many calls, how many counselling sessions, and the reasons that somebody's calling. So it might be that there's been a bereavement. It might be that they've got some work-related issues, some stress around that, some anxiety, or it might be a relationship issue. There's a whole raft of reasons why people call. And whilst that's confidential, we don't disclose names, of course, we do give all that information to HR teams just for them to understand what's going on that they might not be aware of. Next slide, please, Simon. So mental health days off in 2020 increased, as I've said, to 3.2 days off at a total cost to the economy of 14 billion. So representing to that 10% rise and obviously a significant dent in bottom line figures. Next slide, please, Simon. So presenteeism, all of you will probably know what presenteeism means. It's the act of showing up for work without being productive, generally because ill health prevents it. And I've been there. I think everybody in this room has had a day like that. When we've been at work, we've not exactly been very productive though. Obviously, days lost to mental health are not confined to a 24-hour period of absence. Some presenteeism must be prevalent before anybody takes time off work poorly. So that could be weeks or days of presenteeism, couldn't it, leading up to somebody finally being off work. Employees are likely to struggle with their mental well-being for some time before things get bad enough to take a day off. And our research, as I mentioned earlier, shows a third of employees say their mental health affects their productivity on a weekly basis. Next slide, please, Simon. I love the photograph on this slide, but to all the HR managers in the audience, my apologies. Our lovely marketing team might have a more imaginative view than you actually physically have from your desk. And I know where I'm sat now, I'm looking at a white wall in front of me. I don't think it would be very nice to be looking at the beach. Feedback I've received from my clients over the last 16 months, most of whom are HR managers. I deal with HR managers rather than FDs and MDs. is that they're recognising the importance of the support they are offering to their employees and their colleagues more than ever before. So from organising something as simple as a mental health first aid course to wellbeing webinars, to the health cash plan and the employee assistance programs, the feedback from employees has been very positive and the services have been really well used. I think probably the pandemic has done more to highlight the importance of well-being in a company than everything I've been trying to do for the last 7 years and Westfield have been trying to do for the last 102 years. Interestingly, in 2019, the Centre for Economic Performance published a report of wellbeing data from almost 2 million employees. So it was huge, a far bigger report than ours was, over the performance of 80,000 businesses. And it found that higher wellbeing is positively correlated with productivity and business profitability. Their conclusion is something we could have all told them. Happier workers work better. Next slide, please, Simon. Now, I'm not trying to tell you guys how to suck eggs here. You know the importance of good relationships more than anybody. We found, though, that often an employee suffering from mental ill health will be directed in their workplace to the HR team, to the HR manager, often out of fear from a line manager of how to report this and how to handle it. They're much more comfortable with a broken leg or tonsillitis. With 26% of employees feeling more anxious about work, it's so important that those managers or team leaders working closest to a member of staff feels confident to help should a mental health problem show itself. So whether that's face-to-face or, as in my case now, Zoom meetings every week and phone calls often and not almost every day with my line manager, it's so important to keep in touch. I'm really lucky. I have a really good manager in Steve Winship, who's always there for me if needed. And he knows me so well, he'll ask me instantly, the moment he's speaking to me, say, "Are you all right?" Because he knows me. I look back at a time, though, in my managerial banking career at HSBC, and I say I was there 34 years, a lifetime, when 12 years ago, I was really very poorly mentally and off work. I've been unwell for weeks looking back, leading up to finally taking time off, hence why I've covered presenteeism in this presentation. I stopped taking lunch breaks. I worked through my lunch breaks. I'd really stopped eating anything. I was living off coffee and I was losing weight. I've never been a big girl, but I was just getting down to like 9 stone and it wasn't enough. I know I didn't look well. I was arriving earlier and earlier for work. I was working at Southport branch and I was staying later and later. I was only getting home at 7 o'clock at night, leaving at 7 o'clock in the morning. My anxiety was very, very bad. And the signs must have been visible to everybody in that branch about how poorly I was becoming. But my manager never said a thing to me, never approached me, didn't mention it. And he was a mature guy, had a family, he had a wife. After my first week off, when I finally realised I couldn't carry on any longer, I telephoned my line manager to give him an update. The first thing I'd done, I'd rung Open Line, our employee assistance programme, and I'd used my private medical insurance and got an appointment with a psychiatrist at the Priory in Preston. And I told him I'd call him after my appointment at the end of the week. I was so anxious to be well again. I was looking up everything I could find about mental ill health because I wanted to be well and I was doing everything in my power to get well again. I was so concerned. And he actually said to me not to bother contacting him until I was coming back to work. I was floored when he said that to me because I really needed somebody close to me at that time to give me some confidence back, to say, "It's all right, Carol, we're looking after your job for you." I was so worried. I had a portfolio of all these premier clients at the time, but it was a dismissive call. "Don't ring me till you're ready to come back to work." Perhaps he thought he was being helpful. I really don't know. And HR, working for a huge organisation like HSBC, was an unknown person in Canary Wharf. They had a huge HR department. It wasn't somebody in an office in the building I was working in that I could go and have a chat with. And it was partly due to this experience that led me to doing the job I do now. I'm so passionate about what Westfield offer and the services we can help put in place to help people like you look after their staff and educate managers to be better at their job than my manager was. So next slide, please, Simon. So really, I think this is my favourite slide because it talks about all the wonderful things I've been taught through my mental health first aid training. And of course, listening to my clients over the last 7 years about what they're doing and how they've developed workplace cultures, because I'm only a small part of that. I've got some very intelligent, very well-equipped HR managers that just need some of my services. They don't need me, as I say, to tell them how to suck eggs. And of course, my own experience of being mentally unwell. So the slide here talks about developing genuine connections. My coffee break, my Zoom meeting with my manager once a week, and my phone calls to him are invaluable to me. I haven't felt isolated. I've still felt part of a team, and I've still felt very cared for. And it doesn't have to be that corporate hard world that I worked in at the bank all those years ago. It should be a kinder world, especially now, shouldn't it? And it's a two-way thing, that conversation I have with him. I know straight away Steve isn't himself, and he wears his heart on his sleeve, and I'll say, "What's up, Steve? You're not yourself, are you?" So it works both ways, that. Make resources readily available and easy to find. They're often hidden, aren't they, in our intranets and things. And what I've started doing in the last 6 months, I've started providing, I order them from our printers, little tiny like business card size cards to give to my customers with all the relevant contact details on for HR managers to just hand out to an employee. All the telephone numbers for a counselling line on there. Really handy. Something as simple as that. So good just to have to hand to give to somebody who might need to make that call. And one thing on here I'm useless at, even though I've had my HR and my MHFA training, is to practice empathetic listening. As managers, we like to find solutions, and I'm a salesperson. I love talking. And it's the hardest thing in the world just to shut up and listen. But I am trying. And my business coach, Liz Pollard, who some of you might know, is trying to work with me to do that, to shut up and just listen. And lastly, just ask. Even if you're not sure, just ask, because your concern alone, and it would have done with me, with my manager in HSBC, can make a huge, huge difference. Okay, next slide, please, Simon. So in conclusion, is it pink and fluffy to have a wellbeing strategy in the workplace and wellbeing services? It's clearly not. The pandemic has changed us all, and it's made us all rethink our working patterns, and perhaps even to reflect about who we are, about who we work for and the job we do. Does it suit who we are anymore? Recruitment of great people and talented people and retaining them will require a strong wellbeing strategy going forward. I'm quite certain about that. It's now more important than ever before to provide a workplace that's looking after your business's most vital asset. It's people. It's not rocket science, is it, guys? So let's not forget, happier workers work better. And that's it, guys. I hope that was of some use to you all.
Thank you, Carol. We've just got the shortest amount of time. If anyone's got any questions for Carol. I'm not seeing anything in the chat box. Justine's just dropped a comment in there. I'm not fast enough to read it on the fly, though. I can't. Yeah. Again, I'm not good at multitasking.
Simon, Justine's a client of mine. I didn't know she was coming on today. And I think I've known Justine and Advocacy Focus for about 2 or 3 years now, Justine, isn't it? And it's a real privilege to work with her business. And I think we've had a huge impact as well, Justine, haven't we, for your staff? So yeah, there's my little advocate.
Totally, Carol. We wouldn't be without Westfield EAP. It underpins everything that we do there in terms of physical and mental well-being for the team. So it's just, and it's such an affordable option. We're a charity, but we just think it's the most solid investment to do for our people. And yeah, we've been doing it for 3 years with Westfield, Carol.
Yeah.
And we get to work with you as well.
Yeah.
So win-win.
Yeah, we do. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Justine. And thanks, Carol. And yes, Claire, we'll put Carol's contact details and the links to those 2 reports that she mentioned in the follow-up email, which, if I know Debbie, will already be written and ready to come flying out. And Carol, thank you also just for your candid reflections on your own personal mental health journey as well. I think just even conversations like that and people being prepared to share their own stories helps to break the taboo that I think still exists in workplaces.
My
so
pleasure.
Thank you for
just
that.
Briefly, since my time at HSBC, I left 7-8 years ago, the CEO there had a mental breakdown and he came back to work and was very, very open about it. And I think that helped change the culture there. I think it has improved. Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Carol. We will crack on. Ruth next. Ruth is Ruth Walsh. She's Boohoo's head of HR operations, and she's going to talk us through the growth that the company has seen. It seems every time I open the BBC News app, I get another story about either an acquisition that Boohoo have made, some multinational brand that they've acquired, or a huge growth in sales or profit, or they're moving into yet another business, another building on the Hessenford Industrial Estate. So it's a real expansion journey. We'll find out the details, I'm sure. But what has that meant for their people? Ruth looks after the people, obviously, and in terms of opportunities, but also how they've adapted to keep their workforce safe, with families and communities protected, whilst continuing to run the warehouse. Because if I order a bikini at 11 p.m, I want to make sure it's on my doorstep by midday the following day. So Ruth's going to talk us through all that, and looking forward also to the 19th of July, and then some interesting, innovative stuff around the apprenticeship levy as well. So Ruth, over to you.
Sorry, just bear with me, I'm just sharing my screen. Can you see that okay, Simon?
We can, that's working.
Oh, that's perfect, that's perfect. Okay, so I'm Ruth Walsh, head of HR operations at Boohoo. Started with Boohoo 18 months ago now, after a long career at McDonald's. So big change for myself, and 8 weeks later, we went into lockdown. So I'm just going to talk you through the next 15-20 minutes, just a little bit more about the operation at Burnley and our journey quite quickly for myself after a career change in and out of lockdown. I'm just trying to change this.
If you hover your mouse bottom right, you should get a little pop-up grayed out. Bottom left. Yeah. A little pop-up that grays out that with a right arrow.
Right, yeah,
on.
we did practice this, didn't we, Simon? Okay, there we go. Result. Okay, so where did it all begin? As Simon just alluded to, we've had significant expansion in the last 12 months, but it all began when we moved from Glossop, Manchester to Burnley in 2010. So the building that we've bought now really is just a small proportion. As you can see now on the right hand side, we've moved into various locations within the industrial estate at Burnley, with the most recent one being TRW and the Weld Mesh site that we secured on site. And we've also, in the last year, we've acquired 3 more warehouses. We have Burnley, but we also have our Pretty Little Thing operation over at Sheffield. But with the expansion that we've seen in the last 12 months, we've quickly had to move and expand into other operations. So the more recent expansions and acquisitions in the last 12 months, we bought Oasis and Warehouse. And more recently, that you may have seen in the news, is the Debenhams brand just before Christmas. And in May, the Burton's Wallis and Dorothy Perkins brand came across to us from Arcadia as well. So with the brand acquisitions becomes the challenges in the supply chain and the need for more warehouse space. So we've moved from Burnley is at capacity at the moment. So in November, we'd already made the decision to operate our own warehouse, which is in Wellingborough, in-house, just to create more opportunity for our people. across both of our existing sites. And quite quickly, with the Arcadia brands coming on board, we've opened another warehouse that's due to open actually next week that will house the Arcadia brands that's in Rugby. So quite significant change for our structure and our people in the last 12 months. So a few facts for you, because I always find these fascinating as well. In the last year alone from Burnley, we've shipped just shy of 72 million units, which is over 22 million orders to customers around the world. We actually ship to 80 different countries. So whether, you know, somebody's ordering a bikini, you know, in Sydney or in Dubai or Bolton, everything was coming out of Burnley operation, which is quite staggering. But what does that mean for our people? For the last 12 months, with the expansion and acquisitions, we've given out 1,400 permanent contracts to colleagues and residents within the Burnley area. And we're also moving to more of a direct recruitment model. With the Arcadia brands, we secured over 700 jobs with the brands that we acquired. And the expansion that we've seen as well has also created 1,000 jobs. More so, we've got 600 jobs that's been created within the local area. And then with the expansion of the warehouses, we expect to double that in the next couple of months as well as the warehouses grow. So from a colleague perspective, I think this is just Burnley alone, but as you can see from the graph, I think that kind of sums up the amount of change that the business has seen, particularly in the last 8 years alone, as the operations moved from just shy of 140 colleagues up to last peak when we actually had 4,500 people on site. We've introduced in the last 12 months Medicash healthcare for all our colleagues. And one of the initiatives that I'll call out are the sample sales that we actually give for our colleagues, where they can buy caramel and coats and dresses for £2, and then money raised, our colleagues actually have picked out different charities across the local area. So the money raised from the sample sales is supporting Blackburn Youth Centre and the Labels for Less shop that's in Burnley as well. So we're keeping things local. Free share awards are gifted every year. So this year on Black Friday, we actually gifted every colleague £3,600 as a thank you to our colleagues for the work and hard work and dedication that they've shown over the last 12 months during the pandemic. And we also have free gym facilities on site that we're also introducing across our other sites as well to ensure our colleagues' physical welfare is met. So from a wellbeing perspective, and Carol talked about how important mental health at work is becoming, and we've certainly seen the need and the real need from our colleagues around mental health at work. We've invested heavily in our training around mental health, and we have one mental health first aid trained person per 50 colleagues now on site. We've also introduced designated wellness rooms where our colleagues can go and talk about their experience, whether that be financial, mental, and it's a safe environment out of the operation that they can speak to the trained mental health first aiders. We've also made a move for occupational health to be on site, making sure that that's available for our colleagues as and when they need it. And from a COVID perspective as well, so, you know, I know it's been a challenge for all our HR community the last 16, 17 months. But within our warehouse and operations, we have 26 different languages. So we quickly moved to ensure that we were able to communicate with all our colleagues in detail around COVID and the regulations around COVID. And most of our materials are translated into 6 different main languages for our colleagues. Back in December, whether you'll know that East Lancashire launched an initiative with the Army to ensure that our businesses were equipped if that offer was taken up, to ensure that we were testing our colleagues. So we took that offer up, and in December we had the Army on site for a full week training our COVID marshals, and since then we've been testing. We've been completing over 3,000 tests on site every week. Working in partnership with brilliant support from our local EHO and East Lancashire Public Health England, we've also ensured that vaccines have been available to our colleagues. So we've been working with Burnley Hospital and various sites around to ensure that our colleagues, especially from Eastern European areas as well to ensure that vaccines are available to all colleagues. And then coming out of lockdown, developing our people, ensuring that our people have learning opportunities available to them from operations, colleagues on the first week through until directors. We have PAT values, so we have different activities and questionnaires and webinars available around our PAT values. We also have a day in the life of that we've introduced this year so that our colleagues can see quite clearly what the career pathway means for them, whether that's making a more lateral move through a secondment or moving up to the next level as a team manager. We've also revamped our HR offerings to our managers. Our managers clearly stated that they needed to be better equipped from a HR perspective to support, particularly in the space of mental health, and the various apprenticeship offerings that we have that I'll talk about in just a moment. Something new to us at Boohoo around the professional qualifications that we've introduced. We've now introduced project management qualifications and also a level 6 in diversity and inclusion. And something new to us as well this year has been the coaching and mentoring scheme that we link to our 9-box talent grid. We offer level 5 coaching apprenticeships now through the levy that 12 of our colleagues, including myself, have taken up, and we're hoping to double those numbers by the end of the year as well. So within the talent grid, the 9-box talent grid, we're offering our future stars business to business mentoring that we've been able to link up through the level 5 coaching qualification using different businesses and cohorts including different businesses. But if there is anybody within the audience today that would like to or is interested in learning more about the business to business mentoring, then it'd be great for you to get in touch. We also, with the renewed on development of our people, we also offer our own internal progression, whether that be just at Burnley or through our various sites now that we've opened up across the UK. And then just a little bit on the apprenticeship levy. As I said, the coaching qualification is working really well within the business as we move to embed coaching firmly as part of our coaching culture. We offer master's degree, chartered degree in leadership management, the various CIPDs for the team and for our customer services team. And we have a brilliant engineering team of 40 plus that we work closely with Burnley College on, with 2 of our colleagues recently recognised for the creativeness around work that they've been completing in the last couple of months, which has just been fantastic to see. We've also opened up supply chain degrees with our first cohorts coming in September, and we also run a graduate degree programme as well. I won't stay in every Levy Network group, but that really has been fantastic to be involved in, and again will be a great benefit for local East Lancashire businesses as we move out of lockdown. So all in all, I'd say it's been a long, hard and emotional journey, but as we go back to some kind of normality, it would be fantastic to keep the community business links growing in East Lancashire as we've seen, and the level of support that I've certainly had as a new colleague into the area 18 months ago. The support across local businesses has been fantastic. So to continue that support from a talent and unlocking the potential of our people would just be fantastic. So engaging in our teams is just the final piece, and I think this just about sums everything up. It's been a long road the last 16, 17 months, but recognising our colleagues. And even if it's just a thank you, as Carol mentioned, it doesn't need to be a gift. It can just be as simple as a thank you or how are you. But we've introduced above and beyond awards to our managers. We're running star awards for our colleagues, and also recognising various events and trying to have fun along the way to thank our colleagues for the fantastic job that they've done during the pandemic. So that was a whistle-stop tour of the operation at Burnley. Thank you for listening, and back to you, Simon.
Excellent, thank you, Ruth. I'm sure there'll be I'm sure there'll be some questions, so I'll take you off screen share so that we've got you in full Technicolor. We've probably got 3 or 4 minutes if anyone wants to put any questions to Carol.
Ruth, even.
Sorry, Ruth. What's going on there? That's because I've got Carol on the top of my screen. Anyone got any questions for Ruth? Ruth, I'll throw one at you just to warm everybody up. Then it's been an ongoing PR battle, I think, certainly for the HR team from Boohoo, because there have been detractors. It's easy to criticise a huge brand. Do you feel you're winning that? And what help can local businesses do to sort of help you improve the brand perception of Boohoo as an employer in the area?
I think, that as you can see, the business has grown so rapidly in the last even 8 years, and just keeping up with the pace of the business has been challenging. I think we do lots of great things at Boohoo that we just don't talk about. So, we'll get the negative press, but we never talk about the great things that we do. And, the satisfaction surveys that we run yearly, this year, they've never been as high, with our own colleagues telling us, that, what a great place to work it is. So I suppose it's just opening up those links, and, the coaching mentoring program that we're running as well. That would be a great, chance for us as local businesses to really, work together and improve that across the whole of the area, and not just talk about it as Boohoo, but no, I think it's just improving those networks and talking more about what we're doing. And I think direct recruitment as well for us will be more visible out in the local area, jobs fairs, etc., talking about the great benefits that we also offer as a business. So that's to come.
Okay. I know that the share gift scheme was just a throwaway remark, but I remember from a previous presentation, anyone who was around in maybe 2017, something like that, the amount that the share price has risen in that time, anyone that benefited from that scheme back then got a life-changing.
Oh, definitely. We've got people retiring early because of that, being able to pay the mortgages off because of the shares that were gifted. It's it's a generous scheme. And even Black Friday, £3,600 for our colleagues, plus we run the share scheme, Save As You Earn scheme, which is 25% off shares as well, and an investment scheme as well, which is a fantastic benefit to our colleagues.
Mick's got a question. Mick,
thanks, Sam. It's more a comment than a question, really. I just wanted to use this forum to really just to highlight the great work that Boohoo did in terms of the pandemic, because it's an organisation and its operations. You can't have people working from home; they're all in there. And what I saw right from the start was them really getting to grip with that and getting really senior buy-in. John Little, their CEO, came over on I think on a weekly basis to check everything was working well. And some of the work they did engaging with the testing at an early stage, I know that had a real impact. And the real examples, I know Ruth told me about people who would have gone to see their family over Christmas and didn't because of that testing and trying to control the numbers there. Still rates are high in Burnley, but actually I think Boohoo played a really great part and a really good example to everyone, I think, for that.
No, thank you, mate. It's good to hear. And our CEO John Little, he's present. Everybody's quite approachable within Boohoo, so it has been. I know it's been a step change for me after 23 years in an organisation, but it is really a great place to work. And the level of support that you get and empowerment that you have to make those decisions has been great. That's been great. Thank you.
Thank you, Justine, for your comments. You've got a fan in Justine in the chat. If we don't have any more questions, I'll throw you. Do you see a spike in sales during Love Island?
When's Love Island on?
Now, it's on now. I'm not watching it, full disclosure, but it's on now.
Yes, probably. Yes, sure we do. And we're getting, we thought it, with the shops opening, it hasn't quietened down because people are still looking for those. I think it's a new way of shopping, and people are looking for those going out outfits again. So yeah, we're busy.
Well, thank you, Ruth. And if it's all right with you, I'll hold you now on camera to holding an event at your place as soon as we can, because just as an experience for people to walk around that facility, It's cutting edge warehousing, which might not sound exciting, but trust me, when you see it happening in front of you, it's inspiring stuff. So
yeah, we'd love to welcome people to Boohoo. That's fine.
Great, thank you so much, Ruth. And we'll include Ruth's slides in the follow-up email as well. I'm going to rattle on because, as I said, we've got quite a lot to get through. We've already seen Mick briefly, so I'll give him his formal intro. He took up the post of Chief Exec at Burnley Borough Council. Although yesterday at my meeting I was at with him, he introduced himself as Chief Exec of Burnley Football Club, which is perhaps an ambition he has, but at the moment he's Chief Exec at Burnley Borough Council.
I've done that a number of times. I don't know where it comes from. Yeah.
Up the clarets. You're more likely to manage them than play for them, Mick, I guess, at this stage.
That's true. I think that's true.
In September 2017, he's been in charge at Burnley. Prior to that, he was Chief Operating Officer and Director of Community Services. Been with Burnley Council for 21 years. Prior to that, being at both Bradford and Craven Council. He was asked to be the chair of the Lancashire Levy Network Service through his work with UCLan in helping them to deliver their plans, really ambitious plans to make Burnley this university town, going from 200 students to 4,000 students in Burnley by 2025. We're also joined by Dharma. His official title is Dean of UCLan Burnley Campus and Faculty Director for Business Development, Lancashire School of Business and Enterprise. That's one hell of a title. He holds responsibility for developing UCLan's academic courses and business engagement in East Lancs. He's also the Director of Business Development, International and Partnerships in Lancashire School of Business and Enterprise, and he's got 25 years experience of working in higher education. He's also got the longest bio I've ever had sent to me, so I'm going to cut it there. And if I've missed anything significant out, Dharma, you'll just have to drop it in yourself. I think Mick's starting us off, so over to Mick and Dharma.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. I think Dharma's just going to share the screen and then we'll make a start.
Just going to see if that's working. Is that working?
Yes.
Just pop it into slideshow view and then we should be all right.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. I'll make it bigger.
If you click slideshow.
Is that working?
There it is. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Dharma, and thanks everyone. Thanks for inviting us today. It's a real opportunity to share the work of the network with a wide range of businesses across East Lancashire. What I wanted to do is tell you very, very briefly what the network's about, and then Dan is going to tell you more around the body and give you go through some examples of the website so you can see it live. So I'll keep mine brief so that Dan can spend a bit of time on that. So what is the Lancashire Levy Transfer Network? Well, many of you will be actually probably utilising all of your levy funds, but there's quite a large number of businesses that are not using their funds. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is that is going back to the Treasury. So the sole aim really, or the primary aim of the network, is to make sure that those unused apprenticeship levy funds remain in Lancashire and then are used for other smaller businesses who want to seek funding to support the training costs for their apprentices. So it's about trying to retain that resource within Lancashire. It's a free service, it doesn't cost anything, and we try to make it as easy to use and easy to access as possible. The network has contracted with Lancashire Work Business Learning Exec Forum to manage the services and to give it that independent oversight. And we have a steering body, which Dan will talk about briefly. It can also provide other advice as well. For example, it can provide advice on setting up and transferring funds via the digital apprenticeship service, but with lots of other different advice that we can provide as well. We can give advice around choosing the right apprenticeship standard, deciding which provider to deliver high quality training for your apprentices. Dan, if you want to go on to the next slide. Apprentice. We can provide support on accessing the range of government incentives, and I know they keep changing, so being able to have that really up-to-date information on the incentives, the network can provide that. Also, in terms of if you are actually trying to secure those, what are the employer commitments, being very clear about that, provide you information and advice on that. And basically, any questions you have on apprenticeships, the network service can give you advice on that as best they can. So please do use the transfer network. And I'm now going to hand over to Dharma, who's going to tell you about why it was established, who's part of the network, and give you an example and take you through the website. So I'll hand over to Dharma. Thank you.
Thanks, Mick. Good morning, everyone. Just wanted to carry on the presentation and say a little bit about why we established the network. As Mick has already summarised, it's really to support businesses that have fully used their levy, but want to obviously carry on training, developing the staff, and this funding will give you access to additional resources, financial resources to pay for the training of apprentices in your organisation if you do end up using all your levy, or you're a small business that doesn't have access to the full levy that others do have. It's effectively a matching service. It's a brokering service. The actual transfer happens through the digital apprenticeship service, the DAS system, as Mick has outlined before. But how do you find businesses that have got unused levy? How do you match those? And that's what this website is aiming to do. It's trying to bring those organisations together, match them, and then allow that transfer to happen behind the scenes through the DAS system. The other reason is we're sick and tired of other areas getting a lot of praise for good things they're doing, and we think we're doing lots of great things in businesses in Lancashire, and as you know, in the HR area, in developing people. So we wanted to make sure that Lancashire was at the forefront and following the lead by areas like Manchester, Liverpool and West Midlands that have set up a levy transfer network, and we wanted to be part of that. What we call the early movers. There is proposal that the government is going to create some sort of a national levy transfer service system perhaps later in the year, but we didn't want to wait for that. We wanted to launch one in Lancashire, and in any case, even if the government launches a national system, they are going to still retain the regional operations that exist, as I say, in different parts of the country. So it's for a whole number of reasons, but also to, just to ensure we retain that money in Lancashire, as Mick has said, rather than lose it to the Treasury, and invest in people in Lancashire and upskill them. So who's part of the network? Well, there's a steering group now that comprises of a number of large employers and public sector organisations like Mick's organisation, UCLAN, and other organisations like Lancashire County Council, but also Boohoo are part of the network. So thanks, Ruth, for giving myself and Mick an introduction into this group, and BAE Systems. And we're trying to increase the number of larger employers into that steering group to just help guide the network in the first instance. But a lot of the hard work has already been done by that steering group, because we wanted to establish the network, create a website, establish some funds, and then start to drive traffic onto that website. So 6 employers are part of that network that have donated unspent levy. The 6 employers, I'll name them: BSPAC, Boohoo, Futaba, Lancaster University, Rapid Recruitment, and UCLAN are providing a total of over £500,000 of unspent levy that we're making available to other Lancashire businesses to access and use for apprenticeship training. So it is, it's a sizable amount of money there that we would lose, as Mick said, to the Treasury. And we want as many Lancashire businesses that want to train, develop their staff to access that money and use it before it runs out. So that's our objective. I'm going to move off these slides and just show you the website, so that if you are a business interested in being part of the network, how you get online, how you might then be able to use it. I think these slides will be distributed later on, so there's a link there on the next slide itself to the website, but I'm not going to go live onto that. I'm going to go close this one down and share the website screen that's in my background. So let me just try and do that. Just see if that works. Does that work?
Yeah.
Your thumbs up? Yeah, great. So this is the website, and I've got to thank colleagues at UCLAN who've worked really hard in designing the website and making it functional for us. So effectively, they've created a logo and created the Lancashire Levy Transfer Network. There's a homepage there that tells you a little bit about what that is, what the levy's about. In fact, it's better there. It states there in more detail what the levy is about, gives you some information, effectively just describing what Mick and I have already said to you. There's a section in there whether you are a business transferring unspent levy and making that available to other businesses, or another section to go in if you're a company wanting to obtain some unspent levy and funding to support your own staff training wise on apprenticeship programs. There's a section there that shows you, yeah, here we go, all the funding opportunities that currently are available, and you'll see the 6 businesses that I mentioned before and how much money, levy money they're offering up. You can click on each of those and see a bit more detail. So just click on the first one there, Lancaster University. It just shows you a little bit more information about them. So let me just go back if I can. Okay, yeah. We put up a case study on there showing you an example of a Lancashire business that has transferred funds and supported another organisation, and that's Lancashire County Council, and they're supporting a small organisation, a charity, to be able to train some of their staff. We've got a link there to some news about any updates, the changes that are going on in the apprenticeship landscape, which there regularly is. Contact details there for the Lancashire Work-Based Learning Executive Forum, who we contracted to help manage and resource and support the website. And then, importantly, there's a section there called Register Your Interest. So depending on what kind of organisation you are, whether you're looking to donate or whether you're seeking funds, there's a fairly straightforward and simple form to fill in there. Contact name of the person, the email of the person in your organisation, the email address, the company name, obviously telephone number, size, any other information that you want to upload, and then contact us, and then it will go directly to Tim Cutler's team in Lancashire Work-Based Learning Executive Forum, and they'll respond on any particular questions. They'll look at what you've uploaded on there, and then they'll make sure that's accurate before they upload it onto the website. And it will then show up as, if you're a donating organisation, it will show up as opportunities that you're making available to the businesses. If you're an organisation seeking funding, then you do need to register in the way that I mentioned before. So let me just show you. Okay, you have to create what on the website we call the members area. You have to sort of register, provide the details, get approval. And then you can also outline a little bit about your business, why you're seeking funding, what particular type of apprentice you're trying to support, what sort of a qualification they might be doing, and why your organisation might need that support. And you can then upload that and put that on the website. And a donating organisation can scan that. It will go onto their website and show them that you're seeking funding, and the company with funding can connect to you by sending a message through the website, and then the transfer can take place through that DAS system behind the scenes. So importantly, there is what we're calling a members area, where if you're a donating business, you go in, upload, provide any criteria that you might be using to donate your funds onto the site. And likewise, if you're a company seeking, you also fill in the information, and the matching service happens behind the scenes, connecting the organisations to make the transfer happen. So I've probably made it a lot more complicated than it is. It is really straightforward. It's a simple form you fill in, and then after a short vetting to make sure it's accurate, it all happens automatically, and you'll get UCLAN's put money up there. We will regularly get lists of companies that have uploaded to say that they're seeking funding, and the criteria that we put in, which is quite an open criteria. If they meet that criteria, then we'll get a message saying there's information on the website for you to go and look at and review and decide whether you're happy to offer your funding. Once we go back on the website and click to say that we're happy to do that, everything else really happens through email or other contact details you provided on the website. And then the actual transfer of fundings, as I say, happens through the DAS system. Okay, I think I was going to go back onto the other slide, but I won't do. I'll stop sharing here and just say, oh, actually, I might be able to. Oh, am I back on that slide?
You are, yeah.
Okay. So we just to finish off, we've got three asks of you, three simple asks. Firstly, as Ruth has said, it's great to be part of the network. So please, if you've got unspent levy, please come and join the network. Allow us to invest that unspent levy back into the workforce of Lancashire and the people of Lancashire and upskill them. And you can donate a maximum of 25% of unspent annual levy spend in any 1 year. So it can be quite a sizable amount for larger organisations. The way you do that is set up an account in the way that I've said through the website, and then provide any criteria that you want to put into the transfer that you want to apply. You don't have to put criteria. You don't have to say if it's a particular type of sector or level of apprenticeship. You can keep it quite open. But if you do, you can put that in and to specify what that is. And if you're a business seeking funding, go on the website, look at the funding opportunities, and if you feel that you'll be eligible for any of the companies that are offering funding, then again, register your details, connect into those businesses and access that funding. And lastly, just promote the network. We're really keen that the message gets out there to other businesses in Lancashire, businesses that are willing to donate money that they're unlikely to spend, or if they need to access funding to invest in their staff, then this is a great levy transfer service that we're bringing to Lancashire, and we want more and more people to use it and keep that funding and investment in Lancashire, as we said before. I think that's, in a nutshell, everything that Mick and I wanted to say. And I don't know if there's any questions, Simon, or if there's anything anyone wants to pick up.
Yeah, we've got one already. Philip, do you want to unmute yourself and put your question directly to Dharma and Mick?
Yeah, thanks, Dharma. My question, we'd recently started developing some of our managers on level 5s. So really it was a case of, is this in any way retrospective, or is this only funding for future development that we might be planning?
Yeah, my understanding is it's for future. We can't, if you've already got some on that you're paying and started an apprenticeship already, I don't think, to my understanding, I don't believe we can do that retrospectively. It's only for new starters in the beginning, once they start an apprenticeship, and then we match them to the funding that might be available.
No, I assume that would be the case, but I had to ask. But it's a great idea for future. Thanks for that.
Thanks, Philip. Dharma, are there any, just while we wait for questions to come in, or Louise has got one, I'll come to you in a minute. Dharma, are there any eligibility requirements for small business? So let's say it was a micro business, do they have to be in trading for so long? Do they have to have so many employees, or is it eligible to businesses of any size to access the funding?
It's open to any size of business. There might be some eligibility about whether the apprenticeship is the right program for the individual that they have to go through, but the funding itself is eligible to whatever criteria the businesses that are donating have set. In many cases, the businesses who've donated haven't put a criteria. They've said, it's open to any business in Lancashire, but one or two have stated that they are looking to transfer in particular sectors that might have had the most difficult times over the pandemic, or particular levels of apprenticeship. But in many cases, it is an open criteria that applies for any business in Lancashire, in most of the ones who are donating. So the answer around accessibility, I don't think there's going to be too many limitations from the range of opportunities from the Lancashire business that are donating. There might be some eligibilities when you start drilling into the individual that's been selected for the apprenticeship. Is that the right apprenticeship? Are they going to get the training? Is it going to be the right qualification for them? So that there are other rules that they may have to consider, but not certainly from access to the funding perspective.
But I guess your team, or the team that are administrating that, can hold people's hand through that process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Morning, Louise. Do you want to put your question?
Morning. Yes, it was about eligibility in companies and who you're targeting in terms of. I understand people who've got funds available to donate to the scheme, but in terms of companies who wish to use the scheme, presumably it's those companies who are apprenticeship levy payers themselves who may want to invest more in the people than the levy they're putting aside. So just a bit of clarity really on the smaller companies who aren't levy payers. Presumably this isn't really the service for them to access funding for training.
It's both, Louise. So if you're a business that already donates into the apprenticeship and you've used your levy, absolutely, as you say, and you want to train more people, then this is available to you. But also if you're a small business, the government has relaxed the rules around apprenticeship for non-levy payers. So there is a certain number, and it changes so regularly that I can't give you what the latest is, but there is a certain number of learners that you can join onto the apprenticeship levy. But if you've exceeded that, then you can use this particular levy source. And again, the Lancashire Work-Based Learning Executive Forum are there to advise, guide on all the details, because it's such a changing landscape that whatever I say today about how many learners there is, it'll probably change tomorrow. So there is funding for levy payers and non-levy payers, and this is available to both those categories of organisation.
Lovely, thank you.
Thanks, Louise. Last question from David Jones then. David, do you want to put your question directly?
Hi. The question I have, and something, we're a small business. The question I have is, how do you find out what training is suitable for funding, and how do you find out about other methods of funding training? Because trying to find grants and that for all the types of different training that we need in our business is very difficult. And if you don't know the right person to talk to, you don't get any help.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, David. It is quite a confused landscape, isn't it, around all of this. So one of the things we're very keen as a steering group is to make sure that we had an impartial and free service for these very, very sort of questions, that, you know, we can create this network, we can create a steering group and create all these opportunities. But it is quite confusing about how you access that funding, how it's changing all the time. So we were keen to employ an impartial organisation that will provide that advice and guidance. I'm pleased to say that, you know, the Lancashire Work-Based Learning Forum, I'll say the correct title for the organisation, the Lancashire Work-Based Learning Executive Forum, have agreed to provide that service. So their contact details on the website. Just contact them either through email or through the telephone number. Explain your circumstance, and they'll give you advice both on the apprenticeship training opportunities and the funding channels that you can use, both the government funding direct channels that are now available for X number of learning apprentices per year, plus if you exceeded that, the levy net transfer network service as well, and which organisation you'll meet the criteria if they have got a criteria to access and seek funding directly from. So in short, go directly to the Lancashire Work-Based Learning Executive Forum, and they'll give you as much guidance and advice they can.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. So just so I'm clear, that includes signposting to the gamut of training providers that are available and making sure you're pointed to the right one, Dharma, is that right? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Tim's team will advise you, but, you know, might be based on where you are as an organisation, which providers closest by. It might be about what particular qualification you have that the certain training providers are offering and others aren't. So they are that network that's there, that's working with all Lancashire training providers, and will signpost into a whole range. I think it's about 24 different training providers that they have as part of the network. So they'll signpost you into the right ones. Great. All right. Well, thank you, Dharma. Thank you, Mick. Thank you for all the questions as well. We'll include contact details on all those websites in Debbie's ever-lengthening post-event email. Right. So our final speaker, and definitely worth sticking around for, is because I'm fairly sure that it's the reason we get such a good turnout on our events, on the HR Forum events. Emma's going to speak to us from Forbes. Forbes, of course, we are, as ever, grateful to them for sponsoring the HR Forum, and Emma is partner and head of commercial employment at Forbes. Before I drive into her bio, I'll just throw ahead to our next HR Forum event, which is hopefully going to be an in-person event. I think it's at Mitten Hall Hotel in November. And this is a mock industrial tribunal where once a year, the team from Forbes get to drop all their inhibitions and become thespians for the day and do a bit of role play. And they're going to take us through a staged industrial tribunal, if you like, with Emma jumping in every now and again and pointing out what went wrong at that point and what the pitfalls for employers are. It really is a fascinating 2 hours. It will also give you a brew and probably something to eat as well. So you'll find that on the Chamber website on the events page as well, and well worth booking onto that. Now get it in your diary because it definitely is a not to be missed event. If nothing else, to see a load of normally very corporate lawyers and solicitors being finding their inner Alec Guinness and becoming actors for the morning. Now, Emma is going to give us an update on current issues, and then I'm sure she'll hold her usual invaluable Q&A at the end. If we do overrun slightly, I'm going to run with that, and I don't apologise for that because this content is always really valuable. If you do have to leave, then don't feel like you need to apologise, but we are recording the event, so if you want to catch up with it at a time convenient to you, you can find it on our YouTube channel in a few days. It'll probably be uploaded at some point next week. But we are going to stick with the Q&A for probably, well, we'll see, but we'll aim to be wrapped up by 11:10. So Emma works with clients for Forbes, a variety of size clients in contentious and non-contentious matters. Key sectors include manufacturing, construction, hospitality. Her clients value her not only as an employment lawyer, but also as an all-round business advisor. And I know from personal experience of dealing with her, she's very accessible and very attentive too. She's experienced in providing strategic level advice on employment aspects of restructures, transfers, mergers, acquisitions, TUPE, conducting advocacy in employment tribunal cases, supporting with daily HR issues, particularly around discrimination, and also practical and strategic training and employment tribunal litigation across the country. And you'd much rather have Emma on your side than be sat across opposing her, I'm sure. But she will be very informative and very friendly for us this morning. Emma, over to you.
Thank you very much, Simon, for such a great and warm introduction. Yeah, hopefully all of you will be able to join us in the autumn for the mock tribunal that we're actually currently preparing. For those of you who don't know Forbes, we've got a huge employment team. It's the largest outside of Manchester and Liverpool. We kind of split it in two. So there's half that work with the public sector, that work with local authorities and the education sector and housing association, and my half of the team that work with commercial organisations of various different sizes. And we're actually using the mock tribunal as part of our internal training process. So from our paralegals right through to myself as one of the partners, we're all involved in different stages of preparing the mock tribunal so that we can all feed in different experiences that we've got and using different elements of different cases that we've got. So the focus I think we're taking for this one is around sexual harassment in the workplace. We're all a little bit sick of COVID, I have to say. So we're trying to write something that gives everybody a little bit of a break from that. And yes, we absolutely love the thespian side, Simon. I'm hoping that I'll be allocated the part of judge because that's my favourite bit, getting to tell everybody what I think at the end of it. But they might make me a witness this time, in which case I will certainly ham it up as much as I possibly can. So this morning I am going to be focusing on some different aspects that we will have been grappling with in HR over the pandemic. And moving on to the first slide, just a bit on vaccines. Many of you will have seen in the papers over the last few weeks in particular that there's been a lot of talk about the Department of Health and Social Care's publication about mandatory vaccines looking highly likely to be coming in. We're still waiting some of the detail of the regulations for the care sector. Now, we have had a lot of inquiries about what this means, not just for the care sector, but across different different sectors and different organisations. And the advice that we've been giving at the moment is that first and foremost, the regulations that are being brought in are only for the care sector. They are not going to be extended, and we've certainly not seen any suggestion from the government or the Department of Health and Social Care that they will be extended to all organisations. So first of all, we've been saying that all employers, even in the care sector at the moment, should be very cautious about mandating employees to have the vaccine. So whether that's saying to new starters that they have to have the vaccine before they come to work with you, or current employees that you may be trying to say, we want to change your contract of employment to make sure that you've had the vaccine, we would really strongly urge you not to take that approach. And the reason for that is that certainly until the government say that mandatory testing is coming in for the care sector, it is highly likely that you will run the risk of discriminating against certain groups of people. And as many of you will know from being in HR, under the Equality Act, there are certain types of people that are known as those having protected characteristics that are then protected from specific types of discrimination. Now, if you introduce a policy that says that employees have to have a vaccine, then it's very likely that you will run the risk of an indirect discrimination claim. And an indirect discrimination claim is where you introduce a policy or a criteria or a provision, sometimes referred to as a PCP, that indirectly has an adverse effect on certain groups. So for example, if you have pregnant employees or ladies of a childbearing age who are thinking that they want to start a family, who don't want to have a vaccine because of the potential risks around that, or worrying about that, there may be some who for religious reasons do not want to take the vaccine. If you introduce those a mandatory rule, then you are running the risk of indirectly discriminating against those individuals. Now, if you work in the care sector, when this regulation does become law, then you are going to be able to rely on that law because the government are looking at how they are going to adapt the rules around indirect discrimination so that you don't run foul of breaching those rules. But until that comes in, please don't take any steps against that. What we would suggest instead is thinking about how you can positively encourage people to take up the vaccine. One thing that has worked quite well for some businesses is if you are letting people have time off, paid time off, to go and have their vaccine during working hours, rather than asking them to do it in their own time or taking time off that is unpaid. Certainly for zero-hour workers or lower paid workers, where we have seen less of an uptake in vaccines across some of our clients. The main concern for them hasn't been having the vaccine itself, it's missing out on getting paid for work or having to use their own time when they perhaps have family or caring commitments themselves at the weekends or what have you. So be thinking about how you can encourage them instead. The next thing that I would like to talk about, the next slide, is about getting our staff back into the workplaces. Now, there'll be a number of businesses online, such as Boohoo, where the large majority have been able to continue working in the workplace. But there's also an awful lot of you on the call this morning that have either got employees working from home and have done for the past 18 months or so, or you have people who are currently on furlough. And this is just really a reminder of some of the things to be careful of and start planning for now, as the guidance has been alluded to being changes last night in Boris's announcement. It would seem that from the 19th of July, the guidance on work from home where you can is going to be changed to returning to the offices and workplaces where it is safe to do so. And there's just a few things that we've been telling clients to start preparing for. So the first thing is to be having a think about how you are going to continue continue dealing with COVID-related absences and isolation periods, because at the moment it may not necessarily have impacted on you if you've got someone working from home who has been able to continue working from home, even though they may have tested positive or they are isolating. How you're going to deal with that moving forwards. If you want to encourage people to be coming into the office, are you going to still enable them to work from home if they're simply isolating? If they test positive and do have some minor symptoms and they can't come in the office, are you going to say yes, they can work from home, or actually are you going to discourage them from doing that? And are you going to start asking them to be following the sickness notification rules and actually only being paid for sick pay as opposed to being at home and working? So start having a think about that. You may also want to start thinking about what your approach is going to be to general absences. As we know, and we've seen with the different variants of the virus, different symptoms seem to keep on cropping up. So are you going to be encouraging your staff to ring in and notify you of an absence if they've just got a common cold, rather than run the risk of them coming in and being a COVID carrier? Is it going to be that if someone's got an upset stomach, you decide that actually you would prefer them to be working from home or calling in sick, as opposed to coming in and running the risk again that they are a COVID carrier? Because there are so many different symptoms that we're not aware of. So start thinking about how you're going to deal with your general absences. It's also important to bear in mind that some people haven't been actively or formally managed for a long time, whether that's because they've been on furlough or because they've been working from home, and coming back into the workplace where there are much more stringent rules, whether that's health and safety, whether that's reporting in on time, on shift time, or asking people to come in for when the office opens at 9 o'clock, dress code, whether that's uniform or an office dress policy. These are things that people have got out of the habits of. So it's really important to communicate before they're coming back as to what the expectations are, and to remind people what the rules are, and that ultimately, if they keep breaching those rules, then they could potentially face disciplinary action. Now, I certainly wouldn't be taking a really formal line from the off. You know, the first person who tips up 10 minutes late suddenly pulled in for a warning. I wouldn't go that far. I would make sure you communicate clearly beforehand, and that line managers understand that for those employees who the first few times they are breaking rules, that they have to take a firm approach with them, albeit not going down a formal disciplinary route at first, and just give people a little bit of time to get used to things again. Another issue that may have gone under the radar with people working from home for a long time is performance issues. And this is something that we have started to see a lot more queries over the last few months, is where people have managed to coast along for some time. They haven't had their work checked or analysed in the same way as they would have done if they were in the office with their line managers, and it's starting to bring some performance issues to the fore again. So make sure that as people are coming back in, you're encouraging line managers to start sitting down with them fairly soon, just to identify if there are any issues that either they've spotted, any issues the employees themselves have spotted, or some employees will tell you, and have a look at what training there may be needed to get people back up to speed. This will be particularly important for employees that have joined you during the pandemic, who were onboarded virtually and haven't had the chance really to sit down with the manager. It's a really good opportunity to have a get to know you session with a new starter, or even see where somebody is up to who's not been with you for a long time, and start looking at some of those performance issues in again a bit more of an informal but firm basis. One thing that we would suggest again is, prior to people coming back, is to have a session with your line managers so that they are reminded of what policies there are, what kind of issues you are expecting them to be dealing with, and what support there is from HR to them, so that they can then in turn make sure that their teams understand that when they're coming back into the offices, how they are going to be treated and how they are going to be supported, so that it isn't a big shock for everybody, certainly if you're going to be doing that on the 19th of July. One of the biggest things that I would suggest you do, and those of you who know me and have heard me speaking very regularly, is that communication is going to be the key. Don't wait until next Monday to see what Boris says for definite is going to happen from the 19th, to then put out on the 13th of July a notification to everybody that they have to return the following Monday to the workplace. If you haven't already been thinking about this, you need to start thinking about it now. And it may be that for your business, returning to the workplace on the 19th of July is potentially not viable, because you may be a business that lets people take all the equipment home so that they could work from home. And actually, you now need to go through a bit of a check-in exercise as to who's got what at home, who can bring what back into the office. Because if everyone pitches up on the Monday and all the computers are at home, then no one's going to be doing any work. So you need to be thinking about that. The approach that Forbes have taken is that we're not actually going to encourage people to return back to work until September. And the main reason for that is that we have the school holidays coming up, and we didn't want to leave it until the 12th of July or even the 19th to suddenly start encouraging people to come back to work when some will have been planning to be working from home over the summer with childcare responsibilities over the school holidays. We didn't want to be getting people to be panicking about that. We're also aware of the fact that we do have some members of staff that even when the government says social distancing can go, there are still some who are a little bit concerned about everybody coming back straight away and wanting to suddenly be sat desk to desk and across from each other. So we are going to take a little bit more of a staggered approach. And for some time now, we've been working on changing our operating model anyway, so that we will have more teams working from home and a bit more of a hybrid approach to being in the office. The other thing that you need to start thinking about as well, that I've just briefly mentioned there in terms of Forbes employees, is how you are going to deal with employees who are reluctant to come back to work for health and safety reasons. Now, we've all come across some employees who don't believe that COVID exists, and that has proven challenging over the last 18 months. But now what we're going to be challenged with is those people who have been very afraid of COVID because they really do think it exists, and they do think that actually there is still significant risks to themselves, to their loved ones, and to their colleagues in coming back to work. And it's really important, if you haven't communicated properly, that you think long and hard now about how you are going to reassure your employees that whilst the 1 metre plus social distancing might be going from the 19th of July, you are still taking clear measures for your health and safety as to how to protect your staff, whether it's making sure that if you do have a big enough office, you can continue with social distancing. If you are going to encourage hybrid working, to reduce the number of staff in place, that you're going to continue to have plenty of hand sanitizers, etc. out. Make sure you're communicating this. And for those who remain reluctant, start having those one-to-one chats sooner rather than later. We've noticed that asking employees who are in that situation to come into the workplace, possibly sometimes before other workers come in, or at the end of the day when others have gone, just to see how things have been laid out, is reassuring to them. It may be, if it's just the odd person, that you may feel comfortable in allowing them to continue working from home just for a little bit longer whilst they remain concerned. So start thinking about those things. If we move on to the next slide, please. I also just wanted to touch upon the furlough scheme, because some of the businesses online today, I do know, still have employees on furlough. Some of you may have heard me speaking last week on BBC Lancashire radio about this. From the 1st of July, there have been some changes to the furlough scheme. So up till the beginning of July, the government were contributing the 80%, and employers weren't having to contribute to the wages element of furlough. From the 1st of July, employers now need to start contributing 10%. So there's no change to the employees. They will still receive the 80%, subject to the cap of the £2,500, but employers will now start contributing. So it's 10% in July, but then from August and September, you'll be contributing 20%. So start again planning for how you are going to adapt to that. If you are a business that hasn't really been able to open, start giving some thought as to whether you're going to be able to start making those contributions as your business starts reopening. Can you use the flexible furlough to be able to cover some wages and then be able to claim some of your furlough? And also be bearing in mind that at the end of September, the furlough scheme is due to come to an end. Now, many of you will have heard me last year saying each time the furlough scheme was about to come to an end, I really don't think the government are going to extend it. They can't possibly. This is so incredible for a Tory government to be giving so much money away. And then they extended it, and I looked as though I didn't know what I was talking about. But as many people have said, we were in unprecedented times, and I didn't really know what the government were going to do, and was as surprised as most people. I sincerely believe, and I've nearly, I wouldn't put my house on it, but I perhaps put the puppy on it, that it's highly likely that come September, the end of September, we are going to see an end to the furlough scheme. And I think that we're going to see it across all sectors. Now, whether they will bring in the going forwards, the odd pocket of support measures for employers in particular sectors as we go through the winter, if certain sectors are hit again, that is a possibility. But the breadth and generality of the furlough scheme that we've seen over the last 18 months, I really don't see that they're going to be continuing with that. So businesses need to start thinking about that now. Now, I'm very pleased to say that from Forbes team perspective, over the last few months, we have had very few queries from clients over redundancies. The majority of businesses that anticipated that they were going to struggle because of the pandemic took decisions last year to look at restructuring and redundancies and looking at how they could safeguard jobs using furlough until they could open up again. So I'm really pleased to say that we're not seeing as many as that. But if you are in a business that has really not been able to open, really doesn't have much cash left in it, if any at all, and reopening even on the 19th is still not going to help you enough come September, then you need to start thinking now. I certainly wouldn't encourage you to take a knee-jerk reaction, suddenly think, oh God, we've got to lose 2, 3 or more people, but start having a think now and planning it and speaking to advisors so that you understand what the process is you're going to have to go through. If we can move on to the next slide, please. And this is my final one. I'm conscious of time. And the one thing I wanted to pick up on here is a focus on long COVID. In the last couple of weeks, again, this is something that's attracted a lot of newspaper coverage, and there have been various numbers publicised about how many people potentially have long COVID. And the most recent one that I saw was that they anticipate there are about 2 million people in the UK who are going to be suffering with long COVID. And this is something that HR ultimately is going to start having to deal with if you aren't already having to deal with this. And it's really important for employers to remember 2 real provisions that there are to protect employees. First of all is the Health and Safety Act, Health and Safety at Work Act, and there's also the duty to make reasonable adjustments under the Equality Act for someone who is disabled. Now, long COVID is not going to become a condition that is automatically classed as a disability, such as someone who's diagnosed with cancer or someone who has HIV. But there is every chance that you have an employee who, because of the length of time they've suffered with long COVID, because of the strength of the impact that it has, the substantial adverse impact is the wording from the legislation, that it has on their health, that they may be considered to be a disabled person for the purposes of the Equality Act. So it's really important that you start thinking about how you are going to deal with this. Now, I would not say that you have to have a separate policy about long COVID. Your current sickness absence absence procedures, your current capability procedures will be the appropriate place to have this. But you also need to think about whether they are fit for purpose. So you need to start thinking about someone who may be suffering with long COVID, who might just have ad hoc absences here and there. How are you going to support them? And also those people who have got long-term absence as a result of it, how are you going to deal with that? All people who might not just take the odd day, but they're coming into work and they are really struggling with it. How are you going to support them? How are you going to identify the people who may have a disability as a result of it? Now, long COVID, I've spoken to a number of medical practitioners and physiotherapists. Long COVID is very difficult to diagnose, and it is varying to a massive degree as to what people are suffering with. The majority of cases, it would appear that people are having breathing difficulties if they've got long COVID. So you're going to have to start thinking about how that may impact, and that's various. It may be that someone is not sleeping properly, that they are tired in work, that they're struggling with their concentration, that they need more rest breaks. It could also be that there are physical symptoms, that they are still experiencing achy joints, struggling to walk, etc. You're going to need to be engaging either with your in-house occupational health physicians. You're going to need to make sure that you're talking to the individuals as to what it is they're struggling with and why. And it may be that you also need to get medical evidence from either their GP or from consultants. But it's really important to take this seriously and not just think that someone is trying to have you on. It's going to be really difficult for some people to prove that they've had long COVID. Some people will have had COVID in that first wave when we didn't really have testing, so they won't be able to show for definite that they've even had COVID. But it's really important that we still treat this seriously on a case-by-case basis. So it may be in terms of reasonable adjustments that you are able to support people having change of shifts, having more regular rest breaks. Someone may be able to work better from home rather than having to come back into an office. And if you can facilitate that, that would be considered to be a reasonable adjustment that you could take. Now, ultimately, you may have somebody, like with other disabilities, that they are simply not well enough to come back to work. And once you get to a point where you have continued to engage with that person to try and support them, to try and facilitate a return to work, if that is not reasonably foreseeable that they're ever going to be able to come back, then you are going to be able to end that employment in a fair way and in a way that under the Equality Act you can justify. But you have to take certain steps before you get to that. So please do be mindful of that as well. And I think that we've got possibly one question in here. So I will start now taking a few questions if people want to put them in the box or stick their hand up for Simon to spot before we finish off. So Kate, question from her. We have an outreach and support service for elderly people. Will the guidance from DHSC apply to these employees in the area? No personal care provided. This is not CQC registered. Kate, from what I have seen at the moment, you're not likely to be caught by the regulations, but they've not been finalised and the guidance to go with them hasn't been finalised. So it may be that because your support is for elderly people, even though you're not CQC registered and you may not be coming into direct contact, that the guidance still and regulations still might capture you. So it's just a bit of a wait and see. I don't think it will if you, I don't fully know what you do with outreach and support, whether it's just going in to keep people company for, group activities, then it may well be that if you are able to keep social distance from those individuals and you are regularly testing the employees that you have and you've encouraged people to have vaccinations, that you may well be out of the mandatory vaccination regime that is coming in. But we'll, as soon as we see the definite guidelines, if you are registered with Forbes, we sent something out when the regulations were tabled as to what it might mean, and as soon as we know for definite, we'll be sending something out. So please keep in touch with us that way as well.
Great. Thanks for your question, Kate. Any last questions? I'll throw a hypothetical one at you while we're waiting, and then we'll aim to finish at 1:15 because I'm aware we've overrun. What about, so we can't force someone to have the vaccine, but what if travel, overseas travel, is an essential part of somebody's role, and by them not having the vaccine, that precludes them from traveling, therefore they can't do their job?
Right, okay. That's a good one, and it's a little bit like one we had one this week actually about someone going into a prison for a project, and the prison was saying that they couldn't go in unless they'd been tested as opposed to vaccine, and the person was refusing because actually they didn't believe in COVID. The first step will be to engage with them as to why they definitely don't want the vaccine, and to get an understanding of that. And if it's simply a case of they just don't want it, it's not because they're particularly frightened of it, they're just a little bit reluctant to have it because they don't see a need, they've perhaps had COVID, or perhaps they're not particularly concerned about catching COVID. Understand that first of all. Make sure that you're having a conversation with them as to why it's important for them to have it in order to enable them to go abroad to do the job. Challenge them on, do they understand that if they aren't able to do the job, you're going to have to look at whether there are any other alternative roles for them to do, because if they can't do the job, then ultimately they may not have a job to do, and make them put the onus a little bit on them to be thinking about what they could be doing instead. If there's a fear there of them losing the job if they ultimately can't travel because they've not had the vaccines, they may then rethink their approach to the vaccine. And ultimately, if you've gone through a process where you get to the end result that they simply can't travel because of wherever you need them to go, they actually do have to have a double vaccine to get there, or they're going to have to quarantine when they get there for such a long period of time that there's no point in them even going. There's nothing else for them to do. They're still refusing to have the vaccine. Then under the employment legislation, it would be known as some other substantial reason that ultimately you would be looking at dismissing them for it. You'd potentially also be able to argue in a tribunal that there's a capability issue. They're incapable of performing their job because they're not having the vaccine, because they can't travel, which is the key part of their job. But you'll have to think long and hard about how key it is for them to travel to do the job. There are some businesses, particularly like, for example, in sales, where those businesses have still been able to have people doing their job like this online, even though ordinarily they would have travelled. So there will be a bit of a process before you get to that ending employment, where you're engaging with the employee to try and find a compromise effectively if you can. And also what I'd say is that some of these employees you may have had for a long time, you may have invested a long time in training them, they may be in a key role where they work with other people, and ultimately you've got to think about that wider message that if you are bringing in really clear mandatory rules that you're prepared to sack for, how's that going to look to other employees? Is that going to have an impact on them? And if so, is that going to be a negative impact? So it's not just a case of bringing a rule for everybody. It's unfortunately we're dealing with human beings, and it's never that straightforward, unfortunately.
Great, thank you, Emma. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. I'm not seeing anyone else waving wildly at the screen. No, okay, great. Well, thank you once again, Emma. Invaluable update, and definitely worth the slight overrun. Thank you for your patience, and thank you all for attending today's HR event. We're thankful to Emma and the team at Forbes for not only providing that great update, but also for being our generous sponsors of the event. Thank you to Dharma and to Mick. Thank you to Carol, and thank you to Ruth from Boohoo, and really looking forward to when we can be in person at Boohoo at a future event. Talking of future events, don't forget the Mock Employment Tribunal, which Debbie has helpfully put in the chat for us all. That's on the 2nd of November 2021, with Emma either as the scary judge or as the emotional witness. We're not sure which yet, but you'll have to tune in to find out. And all the details on that web link there, and we'll put them in the post-event email as well. Thank you for your support for HR Forum, and enjoy the rest of Tuesday. Take care, everyone. Thanks for watching this Chamber Live video from the East Lancashire Chamber of Commerce. If you've enjoyed this content, then you might enjoy some of the other content that's on the screen now. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel.